This video is brought to you by Nokian Tires, a leader in safety and sustainability. Maximize performance and efficiency with their made in USA all-season tires and their dedicated Hakkapeliitta EV winter line from the inventor of the winter tire. Learn more at nokiantire.com/EV. This video is also brought to you by Magna, forward for all.
Welcome back to Out of Spec Reviews and welcome to Polestar Day. We have an entire other video on this experience as a whole. This is the event called Polestar Day. It's the first one that they've ever really done. So hopefully they do more because it's pretty cool. A lot of other cars that you can kind of see around the area, but we are focusing this video on the Polestar 4. This is one of the halo cars of the event itself because it's coming to market fairly soon. I mean, it's starting to be manufactured next week actually, but that's more for like China, and then Europe is close to follow, and then the US will follow. So we do have a bit of time with this. There's 400 other journalists here, or actually I think more than 400 journalists and Polestar owners and investors and a lot of people here, but we're trying to squeeze in some time. So don't mind if you see other people kind of hanging around, but let's look at the Polestar 4. So the Polestar 4, unlike the Polestar 3 that we've known, is built on the SEA, which is Sustainable Experience Architecture. So not the CMA platform that we knew before, which was, it had electrification in mind, but it was also built to support, gas vehicles or hybrids. This is actually electrified, ground up from the beginning. So no compromises needed for the gasoline type, but this is the Polestar 4. Kind of the exterior walk around is where we'll start. There's a lot to take in here. You saw Kyle's Polestar 3 walk around, hopefully, which that's right there. Not the exact one he filmed. Well, it might be actually, I don't know. But unlike the Polestar 3, this one actually has these Thor hammer headlights split a little bit. So the Polestar 3, they're like almost next to each other. This is a nice split, which you can see is kind of the direction they're going. You can kind of see way over there is the Polestar 5, and then behind that's the Polestar 6. You can't really see, but they seem to be spreading apart with every generation, which is kind of funny. But still distinctly Scandinavian Thor's hammer, as they or we call it. I don't really know. Either way, it's pretty awesome. Unlike the Polestar 3, this does actually not have the safety zone. Is that what they called that?
Smart zone?
Smart zone, that's right. They kind of have it all separated here. I prefer the smart zone. I think it's cool and quirky, but this is a bit sleeker, I suppose. I actually think the front end of this looks a little bit Genesis GV60 to me, like the split and the curvy, whereas the other cars like the Polestar 5 and the Polestar 2 are a bit more jagged angular. This one's a bit more curvy. And here's the radar down here, front camera. There are a bunch of cameras around the car, 11 on the outside, which will help with your actual ADAS systems. So you also have this really cool Polestar logo, which is kind of etched out around the sides with light, which is a really cool implementation. Some cars have an actual lit up logo, the entire thing lights up. But if you do that, that means the entire thing has to be like that weird opaque, milky looking color to actually light up, which would look pretty terrible on some colors. So this is actually a great implementation, just a body colored logo. I know on a black car this would be black and it'd be lit up around the edges like normal. The camera outline being black, I don't know if I love that. I probably would have preferred that being white, but I guess it does match a lot of these other black accents. And from here, looking down the car, it doesn't really feel like an SUV. They did lower the hood line to make it feel a bit sleeker, but that also probably improves aerodynamics just a bit. And so yeah, that's kind of where you get that coupe SUV looking from the side that's almost sedan-like. I don't know if everyone would really call this an SUV. You do have this airfoil thing here, so unlike the Polestar 3, you don't have an actual wing on the front. You just have this on the side, some black accents around the bottom, and then around the side here, this is an interesting camera choice for the side camera. It just sticks out, but they leaned into it. They're not trying to hide it, which I guess I'm okay with. Another camera here, another camera there, just cameras everywhere. This floating mirror is kind of cool, just sitting right above this plateau with its pedestal. And per normal Polestar, it is relatively frameless, as they call it, which I like. I didn't love it at first, but it actually has grown on me. And just like all Polestars, they have slimmed it effectively with this black accent here that just makes the whole car look a little bit slimmer. It actually works. It's a nifty design trick. And like I said, pretty much every Polestar now uses that. They are flush door handles. We'll go inside in a second here, but they'll actually fold into the car, which further helps aerodynamic drag just a little bit. And you can see this glass roof up here, which can be spec'd to be electrochromatic, which is awesome. Everyone should go that direction. I think any glass roof should just be electrochromatic. Make it opaque or transparent. I guess it's more like translucent and transparent, but it's fine. This is sitting on 22-inch wheels, which is very sporty. This is the performance pack, as we can tell by the gold accents. You have Brembo brakes up front, these special performance tires. It is a 50-50 weight distribution car, which is pretty cool, so performance-y. And the performance pack gives you just a little bit of an edge with the specs. As it is, it's about 400 kilowatt power, or 200 kilowatt if you just have the rear motor. So that equals about 570 something horsepower, I think, for the big 400 kilowatt version, which is pretty impressive. And I think around 200 kilowatt charging. It is not quite the 800 volt architecture that we will see in future Polestar cars. This is a bit toned down, more of the 400 volt architecture, but that's still good. If they can actually hit 200, or even sometimes they've said 250 kilowatt charging, that's impressive. I'll go with it. I'm guessing this is a Euro spec. Look at that slow opening.
Oh.
So there we go. So that's, yeah, not our market. Wow, the slowest, softest closing charge port. Fantastic. Around back, we have a bit more of this interesting black design language. This is just like a fake, not even a vent or anything, but it looks kind of cool, breaks it up a little bit. Perfectly lines up with this, which starts the tail blade edge lighting figure, whatever you call it. I think it's pretty cool. I love these blade taillights that everyone's doing now, which makes it seem a little bit less exciting and less special if you ask me, but it's fine. But then we get to kind of the elephant in the room, or I guess the lack of rear window. Yeah, there is a panel here for some reason, which is an interesting design choice, but there is no actual rear glass. Now, what that allows them to do to get this nice slopey, coupe SUV shape is they can move this actual hinge point back a little bit. They can give the passengers more glass above their heads, which will help with interior, you know, they don't have to worry about the headspace. 2 cameras back here in lieu of the rear glass, which I think kind of works, maybe. This is like the only car that's really doing this. So I do want to know in the comments what you think of digital rearview mirrors instead of regular ones. We've seen digital rearview mirrors a lot. They're, you know, in GM products, and a lot of other companies are starting to do those, where you flip the mirror and it goes to a camera in the rear instead of the actual rearview mirror. But this is not even giving you the option. It is just digital rearview mirror. There's another camera down here. We of course have the Polestar logo, which is one of my favorite logos in the entire automotive industry. And inside here is the trunk, which is another feature of having no glass. Means you don't have to necessarily worry about how the trunk is packaged for sight lines, etc. So I'm okay with it, but again, I'm curious what you guys think of the no back glass thing. This is huge amount of space, I would say, about 500 liters. And then if you fold the rear seats down, it's 1,500 liters, which is nearly 50 cubic feet. So totally solid. A lot of coupe SUVs like this one are compromised with storage capacity. This is one way to fight that compromise back. And I guess probably a little bit better sound deadening, possibly better structural rigidity. There's a lot of benefits to removing the requirement of the normal rearview mirror pass-through. You'd be looking at the rear passenger heads anyways. Closing that back down, nice and slow, feels very, very solidly built. And I'm curious, if you bought this, would you wrap this black, just like you Tesla nose cone people from the early Model S days? Because then it would look a bit more quote-unquote normal. It would look like the, I guess, normal rear glass, especially if you have your rear windows tinted. So let's actually jump into the interior of this thing. Oh man, I'm immediately happy, in a very happy place. This is an interesting, slightly different layout. Mostly familiar. It's definitely Polestar when you get in here, or I guess a Volvo. They kind of blend a little bit. The two-tone interior right off the bat is something I noticed. You have this nice kind of weave material that's sustainable, most likely. The kind of sustainable seats with the vegan vinyl, as they call it. Feels nice. Everything's nice. How about you, Talik? Your seat's good?
I'm actually sliding it back so I can get in here. So I can close the door here.
Yeah, it's fairly spacious. I mean, I would actually have to slide this up to get to my actual spot. And yeah, so ambient lighting is the thing. You can kind of see that through this, peeking through. I'm sure it's much more noticeable at night. I'm a big stickler for ambient lighting, maybe. Not a stickler, I'm fine without it, but like when a car does it well, I really notice. And I think this would be a really interesting use case. Not overly distracting, but very nice ambient lighting. The wheel feels good, flat bottom. I'm guessing this is either the sustainably like animal welfare focused Napa leather, or it might even be the vinyl, the vegan vinyl. It's hard to tell sometimes. Steering wheel controls are going to be a bit different, few extra options for like ADAS. It's not really activated on this car. There's like warning lights on the thing. It says it's charging is initializing. It doesn't really know what's happening, but that's okay. This is a very early pre-production prototype. They wanted us to clarify that intensely. In the center console here, 2 tones of leather, which I love. You got the gray, you got the white, and that kind of extends throughout the car, really. Nice little tray right here. 2 cup holders exposed, unlike in the Polestar 2, which is great. Nice little command central dial right here. Wireless charging pad, which is fine. Really not the best way to charge your phone, but it'll do the trick. Down below here is another interesting, almost like bonus cup holders. That I guess comes out. I don't know if it's supposed to though. This feels very pre-production. We'll gloss over that. These are cool. They are magnetically popping in and out for, I guess, holding your drink in place or whatever you decide to put there. Any remote amount of acceleration will make that fly backwards. So not sure about that. Maybe that's for your eco mode driving. Yeah, glass roof we can see. And like I said, in the outside, this would be electrochromatic as an option. I don't know if that button's even like designed yet. Like this is very early, but it'd be awesome to have this electrochromatic. You do have the Polestar logo up here, which we're used to, but unlike the Polestar 2, it's not a reflection. It's just built into the glass, just like the Polestar 3. This is the rearview mirror that currently is an actual mirror, so I'm just looking at nothing, and it will eventually be the actual digital mirror. I wish it was working right now. It's probably working in the car that we're gonna like ride in a little bit later, but this is pretty cool. What I also love is this landscape screen. So up about 1 inch from Polestar 3, but also horizontal is this new screen. Really is fantastic. Slimmer bezels than Polestar 2, but still thicker than I'd want to see. That is, of course, me being nitpicky, but as like a tech enthusiast, slim bezels means modern and sleek and futuristic, and this doesn't really scream futuristic to me. They somewhat make up with it with a typeface, but this is relatively slightly working. You have these same kind of vents like the Tesla where you angle them around. I don't love that. I always wish for nice like physical controlled vents. That's my preference. These all seem to be relatively working, but I know a lot of pieces in this menu don't actually go anywhere. This camera will just say no preferred navigation app. Lots of random things don't actually work, which is fine. It's not really the point yet. They're still working out all the things. Web view browser tester. So many like test things. This is kind of cool to see the UI in its early phases. It is Google. You can see Google Play Store icon here, the Google Assistant thing right there. So Google-based OS, and of course they're moving towards this like Polestar OS, which will share the identity with a Polestar phone that's coming out eventually. Maybe Polestar is just going to start doing all the things. It'd be interesting initially if I was like, okay, what's going to happen first? Apple make a car or Polestar make a phone? I think Polestar is winning that argument.
They're doing the harder thing first.
Yeah, the car first, then just add the phone later, which is kind of brilliant because once you have your OS figured out, the phone's not that hard. It's just basic hardware. Yeah, that's interesting. It seems relatively snappy. I'd say this feels snappier than a lot of current production new electric cars, which is maddening on their part. The screen should be snappy on day one because typically years of software updates may cause it to slow down because they're trying to push newer features into older hardware. If a car ships with slow software, you can fix some of that with software engineering, just optimizing things better, but not always. Sometimes it's the actual processor behind it that is slow. And I'm hoping Polestar used proper hardware. This early impression is pretty good for that. I don't really know what else we can really do on this. Does the clock even work? Okay, the clock works. It looks terrible.
9:33 p.m. somewhere.
But yeah, we got, what else is this? Just more of that same material over there. It doesn't feel great to the touch, but it looks really good, which is maybe more important because who actually rides around like this? Yeah, and up here we can see Harman Kardon sound, we see that in the door as well. You can kind of, that little like rectangle that's on either side of the door. Harman Kardon is a good sound system, but what's interesting is they don't have the Dolby Atmos Bowers and Wilkins as the Polestar 3 has. So immediately that means I don't care about the Polestar 4 nearly as much. It's still a great car, and it is cheaper. So I get why they're shaving some things out. For example, they don't have a rear windscreen wiper, so I guess maybe that saves some money. But this car sits between the Polestar 2 and Polestar 3, which is weird because the naming convention is Polestar 4. That's a whole other discussion for another day. But interior feels really solid up front. I think this is a camera here. This is a camera here. A couple different cameras, which may help with driver monitoring or safety. There's a lot of cameras around the outside of the car like we talked about, but even the interior, which is, I don't know yet. We don't know everything they're going to do with this car. They're going to work on self-driving and stuff like that. So driver awareness is part of that. The last bit of storage here is in there, and that's the only USB-C ports, I guess. I kind of wish some were like more easily accessible. And this is something that probably broke off of something else. We'll just ignore that for now, because this is, once again, very pre-pro, as they call it. The door handle, though, as you probably saw earlier, is just this pull, which is a little strange, but now that I think about it, it makes perfect sense, because this is literally where your hand would be resting anyway, so just pull it up. Some cars, though, have the like emergency release right there, so don't get those kind of confused. But yeah, that's the front. Very nice. I would happily drive this around, but maybe we should check out the rear. So, sitting behind myself, good grief, I could sit behind myself. This is fantastic. And even though it's a coupe SUV, there's so much headroom above me. The glass going way back really does help. A lot of glass roof cars, if you notice, when you look at them, will actually like stop right here. And so it doesn't actually help your headroom at all. It helps the feeling of the spaciousness, but it's not really useful for rear passengers. Whereas this feels great. Multiple vents. You have like 4 vents back here, which is really cool. Your climate control. Oh, it's probably a Chinese model, I'm guessing. Heated seats, I'm guessing. Maybe even ventilated. That would make it super special. If this has rear ventilated seats, it would go back on my list, maybe above Polestar 3. I don't know. I don't know if that one has rear ventilated seats or not. Nice. How do you? Oh, there we go. There's like a actual pull release in the strap itself. This is kind of cool.
And the this is just the back seat.
Oh, you can lounge. This really is business class. This is nice. I'd road trip back here too, which I don't say for that many cars. The two-tone, of course, extends throughout the entire car, which is great. Headliner feels nice. Actually really quite plush and nice to the feel. Yeah, it's good. The yellow seat belts, of course, denote performance pack, so I'm ready to take on the track from the rear seat if I need to. Probably wouldn't want to. But yeah, isn't that weird, Talk? Just looking back and seeing.
I know, it feels like being in the back of a bus or something. You're just like...
There's no rear window. It's just gone. So yeah, I don't know. And I guess, you know, another funny part of like having a rear view mirror that's an actual mirror is you can like, as the rear passenger, sometimes look at the driver. You know when you're ever talking to the driver and you're like making eye contact weirdly?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's still possible. Probably not with the mirror turned on, which I'm guessing most people just leave it turned on.
The camera mirror.
Yeah, the camera mirror. Couple more USB-C ports down here. I don't know the specs on these, but it'd be really cool if they were like power delivery, like up to 100 or even 130 watts would be really cool. That means you could charge like a MacBook Pro at full speed. It's those little details that would be nice, and I don't know if they've thought of them, but this is good for us to talk about them. Next to these vents is more ambient lighting you can see emanating out from the side. That's a great touch. Just a lot of really good use of ambient lighting. More Harman Kardon stuff down here. Doesn't look like there's any speakers up in here, but I know it's a 12-speaker Harman Kardon, or if you opt for a certain special trim, 16 speakers, because it adds 2 in the driver headrest. This says tailored knit, made for zero waste. That's cool. So that's what this knitting stuff is. I like these labeling things on Polestar. Some people maybe don't, like, you know, the outside of a Polestar 2, for example, says the kilowatt of power and the capacity of the battery. So
For me, it kind of feels like you're sitting in a catalog, like, oh, this is,
yeah,
which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of,
it's very clearly labeled, which I'm okay with.
or like those movies where something's popping up the screen describing what.
Yeah, exactly. So while I'm in complete comfort, let's talk a little bit more about the specs. We do have, I think it's a 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it should get you up to 300 miles range on a rear wheel drive, maybe 270 miles range on an all wheel drive like performance pack. That's really pretty impressive. I think it was like, 400 kilowatts, 500 pound-feet of torque, which is 576 horsepower. Half that if you get the rear wheel drive, which means they're probably using the same permanent magnet motor on both front and rear. That's respectable specs. 0 to 60 in under 3.8 seconds, because 0 to 100 kph is 3.8 seconds. So that math checks out. That's not blisteringly fast, but it is still really quick. No one gets in a car that's sub 4 seconds 0 to 60 and says, slow. Unless you just launched the Plaid like 18 times. But who needs a Plaid, right?
Who would need a Plaid?
They're stupid. No, just kidding. So the screen down here seems to have various toggles, like that will set your seat forward and backwards back here. It's not actually working right now, but at least they're starting to figure this out. There's even a color one that's grayed out, but I'm guessing they're gonna have ambient colors as an option. Turning off and on your dome lights, adjusting music. This is kind of cool, but yeah, clearly not quite fully functioning yet, but I'll be really interested to see how that unfolds in production models. We were able to go on a quick ride along in a Polestar 4 test development vehicle. Still very early and not ready for production, but this was closer than the one inside. It had a digital rearview mirror that was actually working, and it's actually really great implementation. Very, very clear, good HD display, much better than a lot of other digital rearview mirrors I've tried in the past. It even had the electrochromatic glass actually turned on in this case, so we could see what it looked like with the electrochromatic kind of opaque feel. The screen also had more functionality than the one inside that we were walking around just a minute ago. We could see some of the things like drive mode and drive adjustments. You could see the power delivery screen. That was kind of cool, showing battery pack energy going to the different motors. There's also the charging screen where you can tell it how high you're willing to charge on a daily basis, or maybe up that a little bit for a road trip. In this case, you notice it was set to a max of 32 amps, unlike the Polestar 3 Kyle tried where it let him go to like 1,000,000. Then there's even the interior kind of ambience where they have it based around planets. So for example, you can select Earth and you can see the ambient lighting change to blue, even behind Talek's head in the back seat. There's also a really cool climate control screen with the same sort of function of moving the vents with your finger, and it's cool to see how it goes from forward to rear. It's funny how it shows you data of even the sun and the planets as well. We also got to try the really nice Harman Kardon sound system, which we couldn't show off completely because of the music copyright issues, but trust me, it sounded fantastic. This one actually had the headrest speakers as well. And the seats had massage functionality, which was fantastic. I had that on the entire ride. They were cooled, they were heated, everything was awesome about these new seats. So that's it for the ride. Let's go back inside. So that's a quick look at the Polestar 4, just an initial walk around. Sadly, we couldn't go nerd out into all the menus, but we'll get to that. We'll get to more videos with this car, more driving, of course, once it's ready to get out on the road and actually do our proper testing. We'll do all the usual out-of-spec stuff, range testing, charge testing, our 10% challenge. There's a lot to cover with this car, and I'm really curious to see it coming to market, which should be, I don't know, middle 2024, rough guess. I'll kind of believe when I see it. They're still unpacking details as it's coming to fruition. I mean, even this Polestar 3 right here, you probably saw Kyle's walk around. We're still anxiously waiting to get our hands on that and, fully testing out the Bowers and Wilkins and all those cool things. But even that, when it was announced, the Bowers and Wilkins specs were a little different than they are now. So they're still fine-tuning things. So hopefully everything I told you today about this, the 400 kilowatt all-wheel drive, 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, 550 horsepower or so, those are hopefully locked down, but they could change a bit. But this is still a pretty accurate representation of what this car is going to be. So curious to get your guys' thoughts on the Polestar 4. And actually, what do you think of the naming convention? Polestar is doing things numerically. So they have the Polestar 1, Polestar 2, Polestar 3, Polestar 4, 5, 6, which that makes sense in a vacuum. But then when you think about it, the 1 was like the really expensive coupe that came out initially. It wasn't even fully electric. The 2 is their first like mass market, more entry level one. Still nice, but entry level. The 3 is a high-end luxury SUV, I would say. Not super high-end, but like it's up there. It's pushing 80, 90, maybe even 100 depending on how you spec it. And then somehow slotting between the 2 and the 3 is the 4, which is probably going to be $50,000 to $60,000. We don't have final word on pricing yet, but we have some fairly good ideas. So the lineup is a bit confusing with the number systems. I don't know. Do you guys like the numbers like, you know, Model 3? Or do you like interesting names like the Toyota Crown, which this kind of reminds me of if you think of the like coupified SUV type of thing, lifted sedan, fastback. I don't really know what you call it. What would you call it? Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. We'll see you down there. We'll debate the whole rear glass thing missing, and we'll see you in another out of spec reviews video very soon. Cheers.